Hi, this is Sandeep Ghosh of the GhoseSpot, coming to you live from San Francisco this time. Being at a distance sometimes lends perspective to what's happening back home. Last week, the US ambassador visited Calcutta when a Bengali journalist, probably from a Kolkata daily, asked him about his views on the Manipur violence. What's the violence going on in Manipur, the ethnic strife, and checked whether the US uh, would intervene in resolving the crisis. That was, of course, expectedly subject of much outrage, but that's not the subject of my discussion. I was wondering if the same journalist, if the US ambassador or any other dignitary visited Calcutta just now, would have asked him similar questions about the extensive violence and deaths that have happened during the Panchayat polls earlier in the week. My guess is he would not have. And contrary to popular belief, it's not because of his any kind of political allegiance or affiliations or sympathies, but I believe essentially he would not have asked because political violence has got normalized in Bengal over several years. And I'll come back to that in a bit, uh, as I feel that is not which party in power that is responsible or that is for the violence which is happening, because it has happened through the years under different regimes. So I think it's something much more endemic which needs to be addressed and discussed. Now, what is the reaction of the so called intelligentsia, the media, and the national conscience keepers of the nation, if I may ask? I'm not surprised that people, the national media, or some of our journalist doyens, absolutely, and the top editors have remained silent about this. Neither there has been any a noise made by the so-called the liberal groups who are so quick to go and offer do agitations or offer back their awards if something like this were to happen in some other state or in the vicinity of the national capital. Uh, I wouldn't blame them because they don't really have any skin in the game. And their primary objective right now is to try and get Narendra Modi and the current BJP regime out of power. So anything that does not affect the Modi government or Narendra Modi in particular, I don't think is top priority for them. But leaving them aside, what about the intellectuals and the more affluent and urbane, the middle class of West Bengal? Why are they so apathetic about what's happening within their state? Again, I think there is a historical context to that. I tweeted about it. I think, in comparison, I could be wrong, but in comparison to many other states, I think the so called Calcutta Bhadralok gentry have always remained insulated from especially the rural areas, but also the subaltern classes. The Bhadraloks have remained in their own cocoon and are not really bothered about what was happening at the lower strata of the economy, and especially also in the regions outside of Calcutta. And that's why one of the things you'll notice that historically, the people who have been at the helm of power in West Bengal have always come from Calcutta or its surroundings. Unlike, again, if you go into any other state, the leaders, the chief ministers which they have produced, they come from the hinterlands. Mulayam Singh Yadav came from Mainpuri. You go into Maharashtra, you will find people from the districts. They've come and into power. So even go back into some other states. It's not always the people from the capital who dominate the political scene. But historically in Bengal, that has not been the case. Right from independence and later, you'll always find it is the Kolkata Bhadralok gentry, the the educated middle class or upper middle class who have been at the helm of power. So there is this level of, I would say, kind of a distancing, if not a divide, between the classes and the masses. And that's why, I'm not surprised when from here I get in touch with some of my friends and family, and especially a lot of my, drinking buddies or, you know, adda circuit at the clubs. They are more concerned about what's happening in the politics in the next elections of their club than they are really concerned about what's happened during the panchayat elections, except to pass on certain memes like making fun of the situation or talking about that, but really, really no great concern. We have seen earlier the so-called Calcutta's intellectual class, who are called the Buddhijibis, or what the Biddojons, who used to come out in masses and agitation and walks and candlelight vigils and all the rest. They have been also totally silent. Some may say that they are afraid of offending the ruling dispensation, but that's not the full story. I think there is essentially an apathy. Now, therefore, my submission is, or my thesis is, it's not about certainly the people who are in government. They have a responsibility to ensuring free and fair polls, but I think we'll be living in some kind of utopia to think that if one government changes, the next government is going to be able to resolve this thing. I would go to the extent of saying, if some people think that if the Trinamool were not there tomorrow and the BJP were to come to power, there will be totally free and fair elections, and there's not going to be any violence in the state. That's not been West Bengal's history. I've written about it earlier. West Bengal politics has really been dominated by a bunch of lumpens who move from one party to another through the dispensation, and they, because for them, this is a means of survival, or this is their whole economic model. So I don't think that's going to change unless a lot of things change at the grassroots. Now let's compare for a moment what happens in panchayat elections or local body elections in other states. Everywhere we know the local body elections have become very, very high stake. The reason for that being there is a lot of money because of the government schemes, both the central and state governments, which are being poured into welfare programs, especially for the rural areas or at the lower strata, which comes in, and there is a lot of money to be made over there. So in every state, there is a huge, uh, uh, mobilization which happens before panchayat polls. Also, because panchayats really form the bottom up political structure, which ultimately determine who will come to power later on at the state level. But elsewhere, it is essentially a game of money. Sometimes it's mind boggling the amount of monies you'll find are spent in the southern states on panchayat elections, the stories you keep hearing, or for that matter, in places like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, what people spend in panchayat polls is simply astonishing. But in the case of West Bengal, that's where the problem lies. I think the whole game cannot move from this physical violence to or really a political battle of money, etc., because of the essential economic condition of the place. So I personally believe the solution to all that ails Bengal today will have to come from economic revival. And that economic revival, whosoever is able to ensure, or even there are low hanging fruits, it's just a question of moving the needle by a few degrees. And if that change happens, we will see a lot of things changing on its own in West Bengal, because ultimately people understand development, ultimately people understand prosperity, ultimately people understand their own financial well being. So if they see genuine hope in development, where jobs will be created, where there'll be greater possibilities for income generation, rather than trying to, the whole earlier povertarian mindset, which was established by the communists over 30 years, when they made people settle for cutting the cake into smaller bits and spreading it around. Unless the size of the cake grows, I don't think there is a solution in sight for Bengal. And this is where really the so-called the elite and intellectuals and the enlightened people of West Bengal can step in and see how they can force a change in the economic outlook for the state. But if they continue to bury their heads in sand just because their children have moved out, they don't have much stakes, they're just waiting for the time to, encash on whatever ancestral property or the remaining savings. They're all happy because the kids have either gone moved abroad or working elsewhere in the country. Even the lower income group people are gradually moving out for jobs elsewhere. I don't think this would happen. But it would be dangerous for this group to think that they can remain cocooned within their clubs or little, um, you know, um, uh, uh, residential societies forever, because if they don't act, they will be engulfed by this wave of what you call the lumpen proletariat, who will gradually invade into their lives too, making their existence equally precarious. And that's the thought I would leave you with today. Because if this set of people who can think, who can act, do not take the initiative, ultimately the change will come from the grassroots, and that'll be a huge turmoil, a huge disruption, which Bengal can probably avoid. Or can it? The inevitable sometimes happens, and that's the only way uh, for resurrection. You have to have maybe um, destruction, and decadence is over. Bengal, the decadent part is over. Now it has to be maybe to some extent destroyed to be resurrected. And this is something which pains me as a Bengali, pains me as an Indian, because Bengal has tremendous potential. Being in America, I'm reminded about some of our Bengali NRI intellectuals who keep on talking about India's potential, uh, s- uh, you know, working at Ivy League universities, economists, and the rest of it, but they never talk what was Bengal's potential and why Bengal has been wasted. I think just like they should also look at immediately around in their surroundings about what's happening in their state of domicile, the country of domicile, they should also look at their home state, where they come from, and say, where has that potential been wasted? They were lucky enough to leave Calcutta, lucky enough to leave West Bengal and make a life and even gain fame and recognition at an international level. Some people even got Nobel prizes. But where is their home state going? This is a question every conscientious Bengali must ask. Thank you very much. Hope to see you soon again. This is Sandeep Ghosh signing off on GhoseSpot from San Francisco.